And this just in, Ron DeSantis still running for president, apparently.
Wow.
Yep. And he was on with Margaret Brennan on Sunday, CBS's Face the Nation. And this is what he had to say about Israel and Gaza.
And let me ask you a little bit more about that, because of the 2 million people who live in Gaza, half of them are under the age of 18. Let's take a listen to something you said yesterday.
We cannot accept people from Gaza into this country as refugees. I am not going to do that. If you look at how they behave, not all of them are Hamas, but they are all anti-Semitic.
I'm sure you know all Arabs are Semites.
Pause it for 1 second. Ron DeSantis has jumped around in so many different directions as to how he's running his campaign. But that is literally, and I don't know if you guys saw the original of this, but it was when Donald Trump came down an escalator and said, we can't allow Mexicans in this country. He's now found his Mexicans.
But I don't know if the anti-Semitism accusation elicits the same visceral reaction that Republican racists have about rape and things like that, what Trump said.
Also, like
because they're also anti-Semitic, the Republican base.
This would be clearly like taking people in as refugees and not just them crossing our border like hordes in the imagination.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's an homage, if you will.
Yeah, it doesn't quite have juice in me.
No, but that's Ron DeSantis in a nutshell, right? It's mini Trump, but really mini. Just to go back just a little bit.
But they are all anti-Semitic.
I'm sure you know all Arabs are Semites, but how can you paint with such a broad brush to say 2.3 million people are anti-Semitic?
Well, first of all, my position is very clear. Those Gaza refugees, Palestinian Arabs, should go to Arab countries. The U.S. should not be absorbing any of those. I think the culture, so they elected Hamas. Let's just be clear about that. Not everyone's a member of Hamas. Most probably aren't, but they did elect.
I'm sorry, we just have to do this in real time. According to calculations about just because half the population are children, and because of the fact that the median age in Gaza is around 18, 19 years old, people have said that around 7% of the existing population probably was a part of the last elections that were held in Gaza, which were in 2006 because of how much killing, how much exodus there is in Gaza. That is not accurate whatsoever. So and then that's the first point. And then the second point is that doesn't matter what people's government does. Collective punishment is a war crime. Even if 100% and all the little babies that are getting killed right now in Gaza voted for Hamas, still a war crime. Okay, thanks.
Any of those. I think the culture, so they elected Hamas. Let's just be clear about that. Not everyone's a member of Hamas. Most probably aren't, but they did elect Hamas.
In 2006, and then the military occupation happened after that, where they went in and haven't allowed elections since 2007. So in 2006, there was an election.
But there was a lot of celebrating of those attacks in the Gaza Strip by a lot of those folks who were not Hamas. But if you look at their education system, this has been an issue for a long time. They teach kids to hate Jews. The textbooks do not have Israel even on the map. They prepare very young kids to commit terrorist attacks. So I think it's a toxic culture, and I think if we were to import large numbers of those to the United States, I think it would increase anti-Semitism in this country, and I think it would increase anti-Americanism in this country. And that's something, after seeing those demonstrations pop up in our country, just with blood still flowing amongst Israeli citizens over the weekend, you had people taking to the streets cheering on the barbarism of Hamas in our own country. That was a chilling thing to see, and I don't think that that's something that we should ever think is acceptable.
I was there. I saw it on 9/11.
No one's talking about getting Gazan refugees here right now. They can't even get out of Gaza.
Everything that Donald Trump said.
Yep, that's exactly what Trump said about 9/11.
I saw them celebrate.
Saw all the Muslims in New Jersey celebrating.
I mean,
the Twin
it's
Towers.
all...
As he was calling into the Howard Stern show, or no, it wasn't the Howard Stern show. Sorry, that was a separate broadcast. As he was calling into whatever show, Trump's now bragging that Trump Tower was the tallest building in New York City.
Yeah.
Then saying that he had the view from above to see all the Muslims in New Jersey celebrating the Twin Towers falling.
I was on the tallest building in New York.
Can this guy come up with his own crap, or is this just going to be complete plagiarism with just a whinier tone and less charisma? I
know the answer.
Bloodthirsty Islamophobic piece of garbage.
Here is AOC the next day on CNN responding to at least a part of what Ron DeSantis had.
If you look at how they behave, not all of them are Hamas, but they are all anti-Semitic. None of them believe in Israel's right to exist.
There's a lot in there, but I wonder for you, is he touching on something that is perhaps real here? Should Arab countries be taking on the lion's share of the burden to absorb what could be over 1 million, if not more, refugees from Gaza?
I think there's something to be said about the region's partners being able to support and step up Palestinians. However, that does not abdicate the United States from our historic role that we've played in the world of accepting refugees and allowing people to restart their lives here. And I also want to address something very specific about what Governor DeSantis said when he said, quote unquote, all Gazans are anti-Semitic. How incredibly destructive and dangerous that rhetoric is. We just had a 6-year-old boy stabbed 26 times this morning because of rhetoric like that. And it is dangerous, it is unacceptable, it is reckless, and no leader in the United States of America should be amplifying a message like that.
And, it is not, there's a lot of evidence. I mean, we don't know all the details of that that stabbing of that boy, but as far as being reported at this point, according to the wife, and it's a very, it's a horrible story, but it's also incredibly bizarre and disturbing. I mean, aside from obviously that a 6-year-old boy was killed and stabbed to death, the 71-year-old Joseph Zuba, I guess his name is, was the landlord of the 6-year-old and his mother. And apparently they got along quite well prior to the past couple of weeks. And according to the man's wife, Mary, told investigators that Zuba listens to conservative talk radio on a regular basis and became obsessed with the war between Hamas and Israel. Because prior to that, according to a neighbor, the boy looked upon this guy like his grandfather, and literally was. This is according to I guess a neighbor. The mother didn't have even 1% suspicion he would hurt the child because Zuba had been like a grandfather to the boy, even built him a tree house. The child, when he saw Zuba, ran to him for a hug and instead was stabbed 26 times. I mean, obviously, but that's what that kind of rhetoric does.
And I mean, let's be clear here. Just listen to as we're in the midst of this incredibly emotionally heightened moment. When you hear Ron DeSantis weaponize anti-Semitism in that way, let that be a moment for you to reflect on. Maybe you're having conversations in your life right now that are incredibly frustrating, but understand that that is being incredibly cynically used, anti-Semitism. And the neo-Nazi anti-Semitism, the anti-Semitism that is incredibly real in the West, is not applicable to exactly to what we are talking about right now, which is Hamas, a terrorist group, being empowered by an impossible situation, a powder keg in this continued occupation of Palestinians and killing senselessly horrifically. Now, what it's the total of Israelis is 1,400, and then the total of Gazans and Palestinians is now over 3,000, and it's going to keep going up and up. And the death totals on the Palestinian side, that's where the increases are going to see. Don't be disempowered, because this is the argument that's coming from the right, and it's being cynically used. And also, just like to the point about refugees, if the United States is going to fund this and choose to fund the quote unquote defense of Israel as they bombard a population that's one of the poorest in the world, the very least moral responsibility that we have is to take any Palestinian that wants to come into the United States.
And
but that should not be even that's the lowest bar possible. I mean, looks like thankfully Biden is going to Israel and hopefully preaching some restraint. But even so, even if Gazans are allowed to evacuate, it still opens the door potentially for the takeover of northern Gaza, and that is also ethnic cleansing. So I just want to be clear about that, because I know it's difficult to talk to some people in your life right now about this very topic, but listen to what Ron DeSantis has to say, and then you'll understand where the moral side is on this topic.
DeSantis is deploying a logic that invites more deaths, including of Israelis, that they voted for Hamas. You could say, well, they voted for Bibi. They have a racist culture. Well, there's a racist culture in Israel. They don't accept Israel's right to exist. Well, yeah, they don't accept Palestinians' right to exist. Like, this is just inviting more and more violence.
I mean, I think that, to me, like, I gave up on the sort of like the moral argument going back and forth, because it just depends on, who wants to set at what time, and, like when people lived on the land. Yes, 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem. I get it. But in terms of efficacy, if the state of Israel was established so that in the wake of the Holocaust, so that Jews could live in a safe country, at one point, this project went the wrong direction, and it is not working. And you can go in as the state of Israel and you can level Gaza, but unless you're prepared to kill 2.1 million people, you can get rid of Hamas. Maybe. But the idea that something's not going to return in its wake when you have killed brothers, mothers, fathers, sisters, children of people living in Gaza for something they had no part of. The idea that that's not going to radicalize people, and this problem is not going to come back. I mean, this is what, the 17th incursion into Gaza that they're planning? I don't know what the actual number is. But it's somewhere around there. That's not just a made up number. And at one point it becomes clear it's not working. And I'm not saying that Israel should have had no response whatsoever to this, terror attack. It would be absurd to say that they would have no response. But how many thousands need to die, and to what end? It's not working. It's simply not working. And they need to figure out another way of doing it.
And then to be also to add to that, you're coming at it from a rational perspective, right? It's not working to protect Jews in Israel. It's not. But is the Netanyahu government coming at this from a rational perspective, or are they coming at it from a fascist, deeply racist perspective that wants to clear out northern Gaza for potential annexation? That is the central question here. And then we're talking about ethnic cleansing at the very least.
Where do the refugees go?
We don't have to speculate. We don't have to speculate on fascist elements in the government, right? I mean, and I never know how to pronounce it. Smotrich.
He's a proud one.
Is a self-proclaimed fascist. Ben Gvir. There's no other way to characterize what he's saying. I mean, they're fundamentalists, they're ethno-nationalists, And Netanyahu is trying to cover up from his failure in keeping people safe. And the reason why there was no military down there is because they were up in the West Bank, essentially helping settlers steal Palestinian property. And we are reaching the outer limits of the capacity of this government to suppress this amount of people. And even by their own logic, this is a failed project, and they need to go into a different direction. And so, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Bibi Netanyahu is a horrible racist in his heart or not. You look at the actions, and the actions are failing even based on their own logic. And so,
well, I mean, one logic is like, if there are refugees, regardless if they go to Arab places or South Dakota, that means that more Palestinians have been removed.
Of course. I mean, they were refugees. They're in Gaza.
Yeah.
Because they were refugees from where they were living in 1948, or their grandparents were living in 1948. And so, I mean,
concentrated in a place that has 90% of the population has no clean water before this happened. Youth unemployment 70%, regular unemployment around 50%. Half the population are children. Just to underscore the level of desperation here, they are unable to travel. There's no airport without Israel's okay. It's very difficult to get to see their relatives in the West Bank. This is exactly the conditions that create more violence. Systemic violence begets terroristic violence, and then more violence in response. Enough.
All right. Well, we got to do some ads.
Okay.
It's tough to make these turns. We weren't even planning to get that far into it right now, but we got Trita Parsi that we interviewed yesterday about the potential for a widening regional conflict. Good for the Biden administration at this point. At the end of the day, if the price for them to inhibit an Israeli incursion into Gaza is that they've got to make public proclamations, then good. I mean, certainly it appears that Biden's timing on this trip tomorrow, both was contingent upon a humanitarian aid package, but what it also does is they will not invade while Biden is in Israel. And they probably won't do it while he's in the region. And he's going to, I believe, to Jordan after visiting Israel. And so every day that passes where Israel is not invading Gaza, there is a infinitesimally, but not insignificant, chance that they will not go in. The government obviously wasn't prepared for this. You look at it's easy to sort of knee-jerk reaction in this situation. We'll see.